a show go wrong when you've got music like that to lead into it? Our thanks to Tanks Arcade, better known as Black Market Dub, Nate, based in Nashville, very kind to let us use that track Flux for this show. What you talking about? A new part of the Slasher U lineup, part of the family of Slasher Sports programming. I am your host, Steve Feck. You usually see me fumbling around trying to make sense of college football. Recently, my co-host and I, Christian Rao, really getting into college basketball. So we have all sorts of content out there on our YouTube channel. So please make sure that you go give us a like, a subscribe. We want to hear your comments. We want to hear your input. We want to know, what is it that you want us to talk about? What you talking about is the collective view. It's not you necessarily as a single person, but a collective view. But we care about each and every one of your opinions. And that's what this little segment is going to be. I'm going to be with you solo on Wednesdays and Fridays. And we're going to take a look at the stories behind being a college sports fan, not a college football fan, not a college basketball fan. It's college athletes, universities as entities, just all that it entails being a college sports fan. That's what it's about. And today, I want to talk about college cross country. And that might seem like, something off the beaten path a little bit. But cross country is such a fascinating dynamic as far as the competition. A school can have the best runner with the best times, but still not win a meet or an invitational or a championship. It really is a team dynamic. And a lot of us probably think of cross country the same way we think of marathoners, or that it's just like an individual pursuit for people with a curious obsession for pushing themselves to the point of endurance, of maximum endurance. A cross-country runner in many people's minds is that person on the side of the road that you pass every single day. It may be dark. It might be pouring down rain. It could be bitter cold. There could be inches of snow on the ground. But every day you see that person running beside you and your car. And your first instinct might be, what the hell is wrong with this person? Why are they doing this in the dark, with people, that could run them over easily, even with the reflective clothing or whatever? Why in the world, why are they doing that? But down deep, you're also being honest with yourself. And you're saying, I could never do that. It's more than individual performance. Now, obviously, every runner wants to put up the best time and improve on their times with every meet. Every time they go out, they want to find new training regimens where they can improve their late kick or enable them to get out quicker in a race. Because we're talking, 8K for men's cross country, 6K for women's cross country. So these are distance runners. In a cross-country invitational, you can not even finish in the top 5. But if you've got 4 or 5 runners in the top 10, top 15, your team more than likely is going to win that match. So it's not just how fast you can run, or the picture of that person on the side of the road in the pouring rain. It's a true team sport that is built around maximizing individual performance. So for me, like my flirtation with cross country, if you will, is really kind of based in my high school dating situation, which again is not very extensive. But my first serious girlfriend, if you were, was not only a shore conference champ in New Jersey in cross country, she was a national ranked runner. I tried in vain a lot of times to accompany her on her training and her running, and most of the time she was just blowing me off about 20 minutes into a run because I was just slowing her down too much, and she wasn't getting out of the training. But through that, trying to get in her good graces, I would volunteer, as a course worker on races. And then I picked up on the dynamic and the strategy of teams of maybe having a runner go out early so to maybe push and motivate other teammates that maybe don't start as well, but they finish strong. And then also just picking up on the individual nuances of everybody's training. And even in college, I used to go to, some of the more important invitational or sectional meets. But now in the days of streaming and ESPN Plus and YouTube, and NCAA.com does a great job putting races out there for people to be able to watch the replays on. And it really shouldn't be that hard for college sports fans to become fans and to follow races throughout the year. I mean, everybody has a curiosity about the Boston Marathon or the New York City Marathon or during the Olympics, where they show, the 26-mile marathon in the Olympics. And if we allow ourselves, we'll actually pay attention and maybe pick up tidbits as we go along about stories about the runners' struggles or how they almost weren't able to make it, over to the Olympic site because of, governmental funding not being there or lack of sponsorship or a hardship at home with the family. More often than not, when we're watching like the New York City Marathon and the Boston Marathon, we're not as focused on the running and the strategy and what's going on. We're focused on, ooh, there's Boston Harbor, or hey, they're crossing the Brooklyn Bridge. We're looking at the outs, sort of like the scenery, the backdrops to what's going on in the race. Now, the cool thing about cross country, as these courses are laid out to present natural challenges to the runners, whether it be hills, whether there be, loose sandy ground, whether they're winding, in and out of wide open, like spaces or in through the woods. There's a challenge. And for some people, that scenery, when you're running, you sometimes get caught up in the scenery and maybe almost like how a horse has to have blinders on. You almost have to really intensely focus your energies on what's directly in front of you and not take it in. But if you're watching a cross country meet, you're actually melding in with the surroundings. So I really encourage you, this is the time of year. We are in the prime time of the NCAA cross country championships at all levels, but certainly at Division One. You've already missed the conference championships for the most part because you've been obsessed about, is Georgia going to beat Tennessee? Is Alabama going to be able to stay in the playoff race? Is Texas Tech going to stay undefeated? You're so distracted by the big stories. That's what we're doing here in what you're talking about. We want you talking about your love of college sports and competition in general and stories in general. The coolest part, I think, of competitive cross country at the collegiate level are the invitational meets, where in essence, they're bringing in the top teams from throughout the nation, coast to coast, to compete in these invitational meets. So you can kind of match yourself up, not just against your opponents in a conference or in a league or in a region. You're finding out how good are we in the national picture. There are two invitational meets that I never want to miss. One is the Cowboy Jamboree, and that is run and hosted by Oklahoma State. That was run at the end of September this year. And it is always an early test of the nationally ranked teams to see how far we've come in our training early on, because the season will generally start mid to late October. Mid to late August. And then by Halloween, it's pretty much over. Then you're getting into the conference competitions and the regionals and the national championships. But the Cowboy Jamboree, visually watching the meet, and you can go back to NCAA.com or go on YouTube and you can see videos of this invitational. It's almost as if you're watching a colorized version of an old Western, but instead of men on horseback, you have highly trained athletes battling the terrain, battling through whether it be the heat. Oklahoma is known for its clay, a kind of a loose earth surface. So the Cowboy Jamboree is always a fun watch, not just because of the high level of competition. And the last Cowboy Jamboree, I believe it was 7 of the top 10 cross-country men's teams were there and 6 of the top 10 women's, as well as high regionally ranked teams throughout the nation. And the backdrop, the course, and actually the course is actually going to be the home of the national championships for both men and women's cross country coming up on November 19th. So we will feature that here on SlasherU, as well as what you're talking about. But it's an experience to watch the Cowboy Jamboree. And the other must-watch invitational meet occurs in Wisconsin. And Nutty Comb by far is my favorite because it's the last test for the truly elite runners for individual titles and the truly elite teams to kind of figure out where they are heading into regional and national tournaments. Their conference tournaments are important and they're fun and they're exciting. But again, you have an idea. Okay, can we put 4 or 5 of our runners in the top 15 or 20? Because you're assigned a point based on your finishing. So if you finish 1, you're at 1 point. The fewer points you have in a cross-country meet, the better off you are. So we saw at Nutty Comb, we saw BYU, even though they didn't have a finisher higher than 7th, they had 5 in the top 15. That allowed them to take the Nutty Comb. They showed what the team dynamic is. They showed what cross-country competition is all about. So it's not the lone runner by themselves in the dark, early in the morning, late at night, battling the elements, battling, cramps or muscle fatigue or tiredness or low blood sugar or whatever it might be. It's not just that individual. Yes, that individual has to put up the best times and the best performance they can in order to place their team in the best position to win the meet. And even the elite runners, the runners that are at Northern Arizona or Oklahoma State or Stanford, all of the higher ranked programs, New Mexico, the women's side of the Nutty Comb, literally, it went to overtime, if you will. There was a tiebreaker. And the bottom line is the top 5 finishers for North Carolina State. 3 of their top 5 finishers finished higher than the top 5 finishers for the runner-up New Mexico. So that's how the meet championship was determined. So we want you talking about more than just football and basketball. This week, we want you to go back to NCAA.com. We want you to go to YouTube and look up videos and just look for men's, women's cross country. They're out there to find. It's easier to find that at NCAA.com, but have fun with it. Look around, learn about that, get into it, because this weekend are the 8 regional meets. And that's going to determine the top 2 teams have an automatic bid for the national championship meet on the 19th at Oklahoma State. Same thing on the individual side. The top 2 finishers have automatic bids, but there are at-large bids. So within these regionals, how these teams finish below even the top 2 automatic bids, there's going to be a lot of drama in there. You're going to see a lot of runners really give their absolute all in that last 1,000 yards, 200 yards to improve their time enough to position themselves, even though they might not be winning the race, to position their team to win a championship. And that's what I want you to be talking about this week with your friends, your fellow classmates, if you're a student at one of the elite schools that are going to be in the regional and the national championships. And while you're watching, listen to the commentators tell you the stories of the teams, of the runners, of the challenges of the course. Take in the beauty of the course. I compared the Cowboy Jamboree to an old Western. Nutty Comb, think of it as a combination of, like this last one, there was some rain involved. So think of it like Little House on the Prairie, because you're going through the Wisconsin rolling dells and just beautiful scenery. And you had sort of the rain part of Chariots of Fire. It's not just how fast they run. It's the stories. It's the entire experience. So that's what we want you talking about this week. I'll be back again on Friday with some more stories. And I'll be asking you what you're talking about. Let us know in the comment sections on our SlasherU YouTube page. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe. Let us know what you're talking about. I'm Steve Feck. Talk to you Friday.